Good afternoon, everyone. We are Group24. This week, we are going to discuss about risk criteria and risk appetite statement. In this presentation, we are going to give our opinion of the following statement. Unless they approve the risk criteria, the board is unable to ensure that its risk appetite statement will be implemented and the risks governed as intended. I'm now currently introduce the question and members. Tao Jiang is gonna introduce risk criteria and RAS. Liu is gonna talk about the links between risk criteria and RAS and why it is important for the board to approve risk criteria. Jinya Li is gonna talk about how risk criteria facilitates good governance, and Ming is gonna give us real-life examples of Central Queensland University. Finally, Yeda Chen is gonna conclude every point together.
Now, in my part, I'd like to talk about the basic concept of risk appetite statement and the risk criteria. Risk appetite statement is a normal written statement approved by the board. It should define the types of risks that the organization is willing and not willing to take. Meanwhile, the amount of those risks it's willing to take should be included as well. And the determination of risk appetite will consider the existing risk profile, risk capacity, risk tolerance, and the company's attitudes toward risk. As for risk criteria, it's defined as an internal procedural rule selected by the organizations for analyzing and evaluating the significance of risk. A general process to follow in setting risk criteria is like this. As for the process, risk criteria may contain three elements. Above all, it's a method to express likelihood and consequence. Secondly, risk criteria combine likelihood and consequence into a single risk level. What's more, it's the organization's internal rules for accepting particular risk as well as risk in the aggregate.
We know that risk criteria are terms of reference and are used to evaluate the significance or importance of the organization's risks. In turn, they should be defined as the beginning of risk management process when establishing the contact and determined or endorsed at the highest level of the organization. They are used to measure whether a specific level of risk is acceptable or tolerable. So to determine risk tolerances, an entity needs to look at outcome measures of its key objectives, such as revenue growth, market shares, customer satisfaction, or earnings per share, and consider what range of outcome above and below the target would be acceptable. Risk appetite is represented by a range. When risk levels fall outside that range, performance is suboptimal. When risk levels exceed the organization's risk tolerance, it becomes more critical to take action. The risk level that are assigned to each combination of likelihood and consequence expresses the organization's appetite for risk. Then, the organization needs to convert its expression of risk appetite into actionable measures of risk. And the three elements, likelihood, consequence, and risk severity, of the risk criteria provides the method to convert board's RAS into a criteria against which the identified risk will be assessed.
How it facilitates good governance. As well known, risk management can be applied across the organization's entire life. As the principles and guidelines for risk management, risk criteria helps the organizations to identify risk and treat risk in time. Therefore, risk criteria closely and even daily related to corporate or individual governance. Moreover, risk criteria is unique to each organization. It should be consistent with the organization's risk management policy and be continually reviewed for changes in values, objectives, and resources. The setting and implementation of a standardized risk criteria helps the organizations achieve some objectives to some degree, like it can encourage proactive management. It can improve the identification of opportunities and threats. achieve compatible risk management practices between organizations and nations, and it also can improve financial reporting and so on. Since we mentioned about this, it can be concluded that risk criteria plays an important role in risk management. It provides an evaluation standard, a standardized basis during the process of integrating risk management into organizations' operation in the future.
Hi, I'm Ming. I'm going to use Central Queensland University as an example to illustrate our arguments. University is also a kind of business. They provide educational service. So this is risk appetite statement from CQU. They have 9 types of risk activities and classify them into 3 major types of risk appetite: conservative, balanced, and entrepreneurial. For example, campus safety and student health is extremely important. So they identify it as a conservative risk appetite. Also, universities tend to make more innovations on their research. So they recognize research risk is belong to entrepreneurial risk appetite, which could have more tolerance. As we discussed before, IAS is a written statement that just gives us a direction of risk management in accounting, but IAS do not have details about how to implement it, how to measure or assess those risks. So we need to establish a set of risk criteria to guide us. This is the risk criteria from CQU. For conservative risk, they could only tolerate low-level risk results. Once the risk exceeds low level, they will make action immediately. For balanced risk appetite, they could tolerate medium and low-level risk results. But for entrepreneurial one, they could tolerate high level. They only make action on extreme level. Otherwise, they were just monitoring. Finally, I'm going to compare their risk criteria with ORAC risk criteria. ORAC had been introduced in Lecture 5. It is a commercial explosive company. Obviously, in their metrics, they have more extreme and high-level risk results, but for CQU, they have more low and medium-level risk results. This is because explosive industry is more dangerous than the educational industry. Risk criteria are unique to each organization. They have different values and objectives.
Hello, I'm Yeta. In the previous discussion, my group member illustrated how a well-designed risk criteria can assist an organization. Then we explain risk criteria's role in facilitating good governance and its importance for the board to approve it. In the end, Min used Central Queensland University as example to support our idea. Overall, our group supports this statement, as risk criteria underpin the risk appetite. It should be aggregated to the level required by the risk appetite statement, either at strategic level or at operational level. It's important to be able to clearly articulate the risk criteria so they can be easily shared with and communicated to shareholders. The risk criteria should be assigned to and owned by the risk owners. And this is our presentation. Thank you.